solemnly swear.
The election into the leadership of the Senate is always greeted with tension, and the 10th Senate was not immune. The election of the principal officers of the Senate did not go smoothly, as some members of the minority caucus questioned the emergence of the principal officers.
I just want to plead with my colleagues to understand that my job here is not to take individual opinions or to work on the basis of what is convenient to you.
In every situation, some people will be for and some people will be against. And that's the spirit of democracy. But the preponderance of opinion takes the day.
There's no crack in the Senate. You don't know. Yes, the parties may differ, but we are one. It's a gradual process, but we are getting it right.
In the period under review, the lawmakers passed the 2024 budget in line with the January to December cycle. The drama that has always trailed budget passage in the parliament reared its head as some lawmakers alleged budget padding by the Senate leadership.
It's no new thing. I have here a copy of the last 3 budgets that was passed. All the details of these agencies I've mentioned are not contained in this document.
The senator representing Bauchi Central, Senator Abdul Ninge, was eventually suspended over his alleged accusation.
Having posted falsehood, is hereby suspended.
The 10th National Assembly prides itself in its legislative agenda, which the leadership considered people-centric. 1 year down the road, the lawmakers have initiated 477 bills, of which 25 have been passed into law, while 120 resolutions were reached. The Senate composed 74 standing committees from the 63 committees under the 9th Senate. The Senate spokesman, Senator Yemi Adaramodu, believes the Senate has done well for Nigerians and gives his ratings.
I can rate the performance put together, the 3 aspects, that is lawmaking, oversight functions, and advocacy for the constituencies. I can rate us 9/10.
He also speaks on passage of the national minimum wage.
To the National Assembly. But when it comes, whatever is there and whatever is not there, we are going to ensure that it's going to be watertight, that either it is state or national or organized private sector that is not complying, then there's going to be sanction for it.
One issue that has trailed the leadership of the Senate is the report that executive has a major influence on the activities of lawmakers.
Our policy is very simple. It's people-centered. We are more interested in what benefits Nigerians. Sometimes even the government brings out policies and we'll shoot the policy down because we believe that the timing is wrong for the benefit of Nigerians.
As the first year of the 10th Assembly wraps up, one of the key issues that awaits the attention of lawmakers is the amendment of the 1999 Constitution, and this is happening amidst calls for a proper regional restructuring of the country. Gloria Umezuke, Channels Television News.
And that's what we'll be looking at this time, the 1 year of the 10th Assembly. How have they fared? You heard Gloria's report there about how many bills have come through the Senate and how many have been passed. The House of Representatives also has about 1,351 bills that that have passed through them, 679 motions. And they're, according to them, of course you're going to hear one of them, they're itching to go. But Gloria talked about the main focus and a lot of things. One of the cries of a lot of people across the country is a look at the 1999 Constitution, as well as the proposal for regional or restructuring of the country. How's that going to work out? Well, we're going to delve into this conversation. We have Honorable Philip Agbese, who is a Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Information. Thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Also here is Emmanuel Anyegbunam, a legal practitioner and author of the Legislative Companion. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Let's start with you, Mr. Anyegbunam. Weigh or assess the National Assembly in this 10th Assembly in this 1 year. What would you say the assessment would be?
Well, my assessment basically is this, is that we should take a look at the Constitution itself, which gives them by Section 60, gives them the constitutional power to arrange their business the way they have to do it and then proceed with that. Based on that, it is within their jurisdiction to set their agenda. Then when we take a look at the 1-year anniversary, I'm not looking at 1 year. It is 25 years of continuous democratic experiment. And then what has been on ground since June last year till now. In a way, well, they have tried, you've seen the resourcefulness, or compared with past assemblies in issues of bills and motions. But on the entire setting, there are issues that borders on what? The performance of the economy, which also is a part of lawmaking, because they are supposed to make law for the other good governance of the country. And in terms of security and the rest, they have tried their best to invite the service chiefs and the rest. But the situation, like I said, on the overall interest, we are talking of these bills, but on my own assessment, there are critical issues. We are running a government for 25 years on a 1956 ordinance as our audit act now, because 1956 colonial ordinance, by being an existing law by interpretation of the Constitution, is what we are running on. Then secondly, our last exercise on law reform was in year 2004. So for 20 years, but the prescription of bad practices is within 10 years. Another area of concern is that as of 2006, when we were existing from Paris Club, we owed almost 30 billion. We agreed. The world creditors looked at us and said, okay, deposit you are 12 billion, and then rather we will forgive you. But let us inform you that you have no public support instruments. Therefore, they recommended to us Public Procurement Act, Public Fiscal Responsibility Act, and Freedom of Information. We came back here. Basanjo's regime then tried, but Yar'Adua was the person who assented to Fiscal Responsibility Act and Public Procurement Act. These two acts have been there. From that 2006 till date, we have no Fiscal Responsibility Commission, which was only by court action inaugurated once. As at now, that council is run by basically a chairman as a sole administrator. Public Procurement Act, we have never set the Public Procurement Commission, and that's what gives rise to the executive awarding contracts to itself. So these issues are critical, and more especially the position of our debts and what we are now doing in name of servicing of debt. After we existed in 2006, and these cautions were there, today if you look at what we throw in to service debt in the budget, it is alarming. So I, of my view, say that I felt that the National Assembly would have by now, because the issue where we are today started from what happened to the central bank. Within the context of what we saw, there are standing committees that are supposed to take care of this. How are they going? We are a sixth world oil producing country that has relied on importation of petroleum products.
Okay, so
there are so many issues.
I just wonder, what are the parameters usually that are used to measure how well National Assembly is doing or isn't doing? I mean, we know there are three core functions: representation, oversight, and also making laws. Those are the three core functions that everyone knows National Assembly is created for. But we know that since that time there have been many more extraneous activities now by which individual legislators are assessed in their own constituencies, and sometimes that takes, will I say, is paramount for legislators. But when you're assessing the legislature as a whole, what are the three main parameters by which you will assess them to say they're doing well or they're not doing well?
Basically, the three parameters are lawmaking, representation, and oversight. That is the official setting. But on the other hand, if they themselves, if we were to be objective and holistically assess the situation, if they face these three core areas without now going back to their constituents, who are their major headache? If you are a legislator and you have 100 bills or motions without taking care of the welfare, let me say it this way, of what in our usual parlance is called what? Stomach infrastructure. You are not likely to go back to the National Assembly. So this is one social issue where every person must have what? An objective assessment. In this area, we can, okay, let's take one person who has stayed or returned to the National Assembly since 1999 is Honorable Nicholas Motu. He may have a legendary situation that calls maybe for a serious research. He has been there, but you may not be able to assess it by bills and motions. If you go on bills and motion, if you are going for election and you go on bills and motion, I will tell you that you are not likely to come back to what? To the National Assembly. And then these areas, like I have hinted on areas of oversight, like I talked about the refineries and the other issues which the standing committee has got. But all said and done, these are the critical areas, and assessing them on that in our own climate may not be as objective as you and I will go compared to other democratic climate. That is my thing.
Let's take it to Honorable Agbese. You've heard the submissions of Mr. Ebunam. So far, yes, you have the motions, you have the bills that both chambers have looked at. Yours in particular, you talked about 1,351 bills, 679 motions, and about 627 of them are at committee level. But are your constituents being carried along in all of this?
Yes, thank you very much. You know, you mentioned the issue of constitutional amendment. The bills before the current National Assembly, particularly the 10th House of Representatives, are bills that will have direct bearing, direct impact on the lives of our constituents. And I'll give you a very good example. The parliament that we have today, having christened the parliament as the People's House, it is a parliament for all Nigerians. It is not tailored for any specific constituency. So our bills, our motions and resolutions are, made in ways and manner that they will have direct impact on the man in Kara and Mother, and at the same time touching on the life in Badagry, touching on another individual in Baga. For instance, I'll use the Police Act Amendment Bill. We are talking about constitutional amendment, which of course is a Herculean task, which is going to take a while. But we have equally considered rejigging the Police Act, the terms of recruitment, how promotion is conducted in the police, the caliber of people to be there, and the period of time that one who has been trained and recruited will stay in the police. So you now agree with me that if at the end of the day we fail to get police, if we fail to get the state police, which some Nigerians are clamoring for, the existing legislation, if it is tinkered with through the parliament and receives the corresponding assent of Mr. President and becomes law, it will have direct impact, because police is something that is important to every one of us. Then when you talked about security, the 10th House of Representatives under the leadership of His Excellency Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, we are concerned about the security situation of the country. Remember that this government inherited the current security situation from the past government. And what is the government doing? And what collaborative efforts are we putting in the parliament to support what the executive is doing? This brought us to the sectorial debate. that we have introduced in the 10th House of Representatives to engage with the executive outside the norm of lawmaking, outside the norm of representative capacity, and outside the norm of oversight. We have invited the heads of the security agencies, interface with them.
Mr. Ebunam commended you and your colleagues, but the question I asked had to do with, are your constituents carried along? That's what he said.
I'm going there.
Are you going back? Are you in looking at these bills and motions? Are these the things that your constituents are asking?
I'm going there. I'm going there. Today, sir, there's no part of our country that is not troubled by the military state of insecurity. There's no part of the country. My constituents, have been threatened by the activities of bandits, killer headsmen, ESN, and all of that. I come from a constituency that has boundary with Enugu State and Ebonyi State. And the activities of the unknown government in that area, to the extent that people are not allowed to go to work on Mondays. Children cannot even write WAEC. So part of our effort as a parliament is to ensure that these issues, okay, if you talk about the economic hardship in the country, it has not spared any constituency. So as a parliament, people with 360 reasonable gentlemen and women, people who have the interest, in the first instance, every member of the parliament was voted by his constituents.
By parliament, I'm sure you're referring to the House of Representatives, because the entire parliament is certainly more than that. The House of Reps has 360 members. The Senate has 109.
Yes, because I speak for the House of Representatives.
For the House of, not just for our viewers, so that they're not confused.
Because I speak for the House of Representatives.
Yeah.
And not with any direct mandate to speak for the Senate.
I understand.
Even though we know what they do in the Senate. And by virtue of our rules, the bills from the House of Representatives, get concurrent passage by the Senate. This symbiotic relationship has existed between both tiers, both houses for some time, and equally, in time past, when there is a joint sitting on the National Assembly, we hear lawmakers, dragging us back as to where the sitting will take place, the issue of leadership of the National Assembly. What we have achieved as a parliament is our relationship, what we have achieved as the 10th House of Representatives is to respect the boundaries, the lines between us and the Senate, cooperate with them as much as possible, because when we do this, we do that in the interest of our constituents.
Okay, so let me take you up on an issue which has become rather controversial and which we saw the presidential candidate of the Labour Party weigh in on very recently, which is the issue of the presidential aircraft, the purchase of new aircrafts for the president. It turns out that it was seen that the recommendation came from members of the House of Reps who had sat in the committee and who thought that, reviewing the fleet of the president, that it was not in the country's best interest to continue to use the planes, and so recommended that, we buy new aircrafts for the president and the vice president at these times. For a house that says that it is the people's house and likes to be called as such, would you say that that is in tandem with what the people of Nigeria would want at this time?
Thank you very much. In providing services to our people, it is not going to be cheap, except what we want is not, the ability of government to deliver to the people. Let me take you back to the activities of Mr. President when he came on board. Upon inauguration in 2023, President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu crisscrossed, the globe. At least we saw when the president arrived and traveled to the United Arab Emirates to mediate on the crisis between our citizens and our country, how he has been shuttling across the globe. So the issue of the presidential fleet for us is a serious national security issue. And if Mr. President is a citizen of this country like any one of us, as much as we are concerned about the life of the ordinary citizen, we should also be concerned about the life of our president. So if from the committee's technical assessment by their consultants, they have viewed that this aircraft is no longer in the best state, to convey our president, I think the repercussion or the consequence of our failure, to do the right thing at the right time will be more grievous than the cost. Nevertheless, as a parliament, we are interested. Remember that President Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, as in Nigeria, also has a member in the House of Representatives representing him, somebody who speaks for him as a citizen of this country. He equally has a senator. And as the president of this country, he has his right to family life. So, as much as we believe that every Nigerian, the economy is biting very hard, and we are making efforts on a daily basis, we also believe, I'll take you to...
Sorry, what effort are you making on a daily basis?
Good. Now, you come back to the 679 motions before the House. We have taken motions to address the state of infrastructure in the country, to make sure that, the roads are also safe and the infrastructures are built, that we reduce the number of hours that people travel from here to any part of the country. A good example is the current work ongoing on the Abuja, Kefi, Akwanga, Makurdi, Enugu, Port Harcourt Express Road. We as a parliament, in carrying out our oversight functions, we have assessed that road, the road between Lokoja, Gwagwalada, Lokoja, Okene, Benin, all of that. We have been there, rising from motions debated on the floor of the House to say that these roads are in bad shape. So
when the roads are even built, are there public transport services that people will pay subsidized rates for?
Under since we came on board, on the floor of the House, we debated the issue of government providing buses for mass public transport, and we have equally seen the executive making efforts in providing the CNG buses. I think they are yet to be launched.
That's what people find interesting, Honorable, that, this particular CNG situation, which is yet to manifest in many states across the Federation. Yes, a few states have a few buses that they have put on the roads, but many more states do not have those buses. Here in the Federal Capital Territory, we're yet to see those buses. At least you can say that with me.
Cited.
However, when it comes to a presidential air fleet, it does appear that is going to get some immediate alacrity, because as you have said, it's a matter of national security.
You see,
is that correct?
Maokwe, as a parliament, when we say the people's house, the president is part of the people that we are in the parliament for. The common man, the last man in Aguila, we are also there, to serve the interests of that person.
Can we really justify this? Let me come to you, Mr. Egwonam. When you look at the, order in which, yes, some people will say, yes, it is, nobody wants, it's a God forbid situation. Nobody wants a presidential plane to drop from the sky. But when we look at the fact that we still have a number of planes which can still be used, and we look at, just where we are economically speaking, would you say that the National Assembly, particularly the House of Reps, has gotten this priority correctly?
Well, if you realistically look at the situation at the moment, the level of hunger and anxiety in the land is really high. Then, like I said, we've had 1 year. If in the course of this 1 year, there are basic issues that concern public transportation, then it will have given room to handle this. But after 1 year of removal of the subsidy, that is the hub of this argument, then going to the president in this way gives the feeling that maybe there is a priority or accelerated hearing to discuss then why the masses on their own, because this issue, though I am personally, I have my reservation on this issue of mass transportation. If you were here during the Babangida era, when all these were brought into, then the government provided every setting to solve this problem. But within how many years? They did not make the returns. We didn't see this. So, but the basic issue is if transportation is looked at holistically, air, land, and sea, that's my impression. We cannot be talking 21st century without a reliable train system or even waterways and the rest. And then now, if you move on this, it shows a level of disconnect from what the reality is. And that's my take.
Well, Honorable, I do not know. I'm looking at the number of bills. You talked about 1,351. Is that correct?
Yes, 1,351 bills.
Which, the House is currently, sitting on, or which is considering, or which has been proposed. You see 679 motions you say have been considered. There'll be questions as to which ones you would say have been passed that have had, because it's one thing for us to propose bills. It's another thing for us to for it to have direct impact on the people, or for it to have been passed and have direct impact. Which one of these bills can you point to that you can say, oh, in the last 1 year that the House has sat, it has had a direct impact on the lives of Nigerians?
Okay, let me quickly touch on two, and I'll start with my immediate constituency, the Student Loan Act. That is a legislative instrument that definitely not only place our nation at par with developments in other nations, but again is something that will have direct impact on the livelihood of our citizens. It is going to affect the student positively. The agency in charge of that, after as contained in the Act, they've already advertised the procedures for students, for beneficiaries to be selected. And as a parliament, we are monitoring closely to ensure the highest level of transparency in that regards. Then when you come to some of the motions that we have debated, and this is something that touches, the livelihood of the common citizen. You recall recently the cyber security, the national security, the amended National Security Act, where banks were required, to make certain deductions from customers' fund, as part of their contribution to to national security. As a parliament, a motion was moved on the floor of the House. We debated it. And because of the level of partnership and collaboration between the current National Assembly and the executive, we invited the National Security Advisor, and we were able to discuss with him to suspend, the implementation of that legislation, pending when things get better in the country. So what we do is not only in the interest to say that when the executive approaches us for things that we feel will benefit them, we are in a hurry. The process, lawmaking is a process. It's not something that you just start. Like the 1,351 bills that we mentioned, some of them border on the Constitution. And for you to amend the Constitution, it's going to take a process where, after the National Assembly has made its proposals, we still have to take it back to the state houses of assembly for their input. In doing that, what we have achieved as a parliament is to get the buy-in of the state houses of assembly from the onset. And that's why when the Committee on Constitutional Amendment was inaugurated, we invited the state house of assembly, led by their speakers. They have been participating in what we have been doing, from the one to ensure that they are part and parcel of the process of amending the Constitution, so that when this instrument is taken back to them, it doesn't look strange, it doesn't look new, to them. And we'll be having a public hearings on some of this legislative instrument to also get the buy-in. Because it is one thing for a member to propose a bill, Parliament debate it. We also need the buy-in of the larger population of our country. That is what we have done as a Parliament.
We really want to thank you, gentlemen, again for coming in. But you see, Honorable Agbese, while your constituents might be happy that you're looking at 1,000+ bills and still expecting more in the Constitution, they'll want to be able to have some purchasing power. So the question of the minimum wage will still come in, and someone will be asking, how quickly would you be able to look at that if the safety of the president is considered an expeditious something that needs to be looked at, project that needs to be looked at? What's going to happen to the minimum wage? Would it be given the kind of priority that it requires? And at what point would the legislature, we don't really need to comment, but at what point would the legislature say, you know what, of this, but that from our allowances we are willing to let go so that we can add to the purse and ensure that everybody gets the minimum wage or living wage that they require? Would everybody be willing to do this kind of sacrifices? So we'll take 30 seconds each to comment on this.
Well, to be fair and honest with you, the legislatures or the legislators themselves, they are, let me say it, I have said it informally, they are enslaving for their constituents. they are feeding most of them. You see them buy wire care forms and the rest. So the burden they have, and that's where I have said they may not be blamed, because we should look holistically at their society and what is involved. Their constituency will return them based on what they have received from them. You've seen the setting going now holistically. There is no opposition political party, if you watch us very well. The only opposition party is now NLC, because now the map is different from the territory it defines. So that is the issue.
I'm not going to say. Yes, as a parliament, we in the People's House, the 10th House of Representatives, I would say that Mr. Speaker, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, is even one of the champions, for improved living conditions for not only workers in this country, but all citizens of this great nation. So we are looking forward to the minimum wage bill, to be presented to us by the executive based on the figures that they feel, it is possible. And when this comes...
It hasn't been passed according to the president?
No, the amendment has not been sent to the parliament because it has to be passed and signed. But when we receive it, I can assure all Nigerians that the 10th House of Representatives, under the leadership of His Excellency Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, will not only do justice to it, will make sure that it is satisfactory, it is something that is acceptable, in tandem with current realities and even globally.
All right. Thank you so much, Honorable Philip Agbese is the Deputy Chairman, House Committee on Information. Thank you. And Mr. Emmanuel Ayengbunam, Legal Practitioner and Author, Legislative Companion. Thank you both for coming in today.
Thank you so much.
And that's the show for this one. Thank you for letting us be a part of your morning. Till we bring you another edition. I'm Neo Taigbe. Have yourself a beautiful day.
And it's still a holiday here in Nigeria. Hope you make the most of it. Thank you for watching. I'm Mao Yusuf. Goodbye.